All right, welcome everybody. It is June 12th, and believe it or not, it's half of the year is almost gone, and we're moving very fast into some amazing things. Apple's had some incredible announcements yesterday, partnering with OpenAI and jumping into the Apple intelligence world, as they call it. And what's going to happen with your iPhone and your ecosystem is going to be fascinating. Siri is going to be your brand new Jarvis as an Iron Man, and it will do everything you want. Quite fascinating what's coming up. And obviously, there's a war on the big boys around that, and NVIDIA continues to kill it on the stock market, growing like crazy. Apple, just because of the announcement yesterday, reclaimed being the most valuable company, passing Microsoft for a day or two, as NVIDIA, Microsoft, and Apple jockey for the $3 trillion company crown, going into the $4 trillion company crown. We have a great guest today, and we're going to talk a lot about digital transformations and digital innovation and all kinds of things. But before we get rolling, let's have our own John Sibley Butler play some music.
I've been down this road before. I remember every tree, every single blade of grass holds a special place for me. And I remember everything in every hotel room, in every song I ever sang, a guitar out of tune. And I remember everything, things I can't forget. The way you turned and smiled on me on the first night that we met. And I remember every night your ocean eyes of blue. How I miss you in the morning light, like the roses Mr. Blue.
All right. Well done, Johnny.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you? I mean, the stock market is rebounding dramatically high today because of the Fed slowing down on interest rates, and high tech is bursting. And I'm curious, what's the latest on your CNBC Disruptive 50, and what's going on with the aftermath of you being inducted into the Texas Hall of Fame for tech. What's going on, John Butler?
Well, first of all, the economy and the stock market is looking good. But if you ask the American people in surveys, I think over 60% say that it's not good. So that we have a disjunction now, I think, in information flow, or it might be just about the political campaigns. I'm not sure, but as you said, the stock market has come booming back. Job creation because of innovation and entrepreneurship is certainly there. And yes, the fallout in my introduction into the Hall of Fame with Mr. Michael Dell of Dell Computers, and with Jim Tressard of National Instruments, and Laura Kilcrease, who was the first director of the Austin Technology Incubator, and others, has been a whirlwind. My phone has been ringing off the hook. My people have been contacting me about saying, well, how did you guys build Austin and make it a technopolis? Well, all of those answers are there. And so I got a call from a great American city, Baltimore, about what to do with Baltimore. So it's been very, very good. But I also got back into the grid stuff, reading a lot of your work and reading a lot of the grid stuff, and looking at the digital transformation. When John Mackey, a great friend and the founder of Whole Foods, wrote his book on conscious capitalism, I always use it in my MBA class because I thought that the younger generation didn't quite understand the nature of capitalism. Now he's come out with another book entitled The Whole Story. So I get a lot of questions about capitalism, where's it going? Everybody should read as much as they can about those kind of formations. Get a lot of stuff about Karl Marx and what's his contribution. And if you are in our economy, you should read everything he said, because it's one of the most interesting analysis, although he was wrong on where it would come out. So I've been doing a lot of reading on that and just looking forward to the new economists and the CNBC disruptive technologies. Andreas, we have so many great companies. People are doing great things. And what I really like about it, as Laura Kilcrease said, who is now in Canada, we look to the future. We did a great thing in the transformation of Austin. So did Silicon Valley. So did 128 in Boston. Now the question is, what do we do with the digital future?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do with the new digital railroad of 5D? How will people interact with each other? As we have become more connected, as you know, with the digital revolution in terms of technology, we are least now connected in terms of personal kinds of interactions. And I think it's interesting, whenever I call up my friends now, they have to say, well, I'll send you a calendar. I mean, hell, I just want to chat with them now. Everybody is that's Andreas, let's get together. Let me look at my calendar. Old days was, okay, let's meet here. So now everybody's life is being run. But I think that the wealth creation, as it interacts with Medica, and a lot of the CNBC companies are concerned with medical stuff, the measurement of medical stuff. I have a company myself where we're looking at gut and the performance of athletes. Most of the data come from Europe. So I think that the wealth creation and job creation, Andreas, will be much stronger in the future if we look to the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting what's happening. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, keeps talking about the fact that because of AI and the revolution they're driving, you don't need to be a programmer anymore. All you need to do is be able to talk to the AIs, the multiple AIs, and direct them with just plain English. And that's, what's going on is just fascinating as it relates to what's going to happen with the cloud and edge compute and the back office and information technology in general. So we have a great guest today that maybe we could explore all kinds of things of what's happening, where the world's heading. We're glad to have Isaac Sacolick, who is the president of StarCIO and the author of Digital Trailblazer, one of his 2 books that we can talk about. And as I understand, StarCIO partners with all kinds of companies, primarily small and medium, but perhaps also large enterprises, to develop the excellence of the key driving digital transformational practices that Isaac has been gathering in his journey as a professional over the years. And I think his latest book, has a great rendition of some 50 best practices on how to digitize and transform. And in addition to all that, I say, before you jump on, our audience loves to understand not only the notion of digitalization, but also decentralization, going from centralized systems to distributed, in our case of information technology, the edge compute, but also the whole topic of decarbonization, as the planet is in a rush to get to net zero everything from CO2. So welcome to the program, and tell us a little bit about you and what StarCIO is about.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Andre. John, congratulations on your award. Super exciting to hear what you're doing and helping cities transform. That's the next frontier, or it's the ongoing frontier that we all have to think about in this new world. But Andre, to answer your question, I started my career in machine learning back in the 90s and in software development in the 90s. And I quickly jumped into a bunch of startups. I did about 10 years of being a CTO in startups, and then another 10 years of being a CIO in enterprises. And the one common theme against those 20 years of work was that more organizations needed data technology capabilities to be competitive, to be able to improve customer experiences, to improve decision making, to improve the life of the employee and the types of work employees were doing. And you talk about a financial divide. that exists right now. There was a digital divide, and there still is a digital divide between companies like you're describing, NVIDIA, Netflix, even Whole Foods, that have, a lot of resource, a lot of technology, a lot of talent. They can go do a lot of experimentation to get things wrong, until they get the right formula for being able to use technology. Most companies, and the companies I was working with, did not have all those capabilities. They just, smaller, medium-sized businesses needed to have a different game plan, and even larger enterprises, a little more risk averse, a lot of change management that needed to occur in their larger institutions. Some are in more regulated industries. Some work in industries where human safety is an important factor, whether it's manufacturing or construction or in healthcare. But they're all being forced to relook at how they're operating, how they're using technology to an advantage. And, when I talk about digital transformation, I usually talk about them in waves of every couple of years. Every couple of years, something landmines on our portfolio that requires us to rethink not only our business strategy, but our people and technology strategies. And you go back to 2018, we were in growth mode. We were in hyper competitive. Everybody was trying to get more and better customer experiences and to start doing more with their data. Then 2020 hit. We were in the middle of a pandemic. We're now forced to look at how do we operate in a hybrid world? How do we put some more workflow and some more automation and collaboration tools in place? That was 2020. 2022, we hit in many industries, hitting some kind of financial speed bump. So we're trying to get more efficient. We're doing a lot more with automation. And now here we are in 2024, and everybody wants a Gen AI strategy, and everybody wants to use the latest tools. And it's not just the employees, the board of directors, the CEO is like, I don't want to be left behind. I'm hearing all this stuff. I'm seeing all this capability out there. How does that change our operating model? How does it change our products and services? And so that's where we are in 24. And I guarantee by the time we hit 2026, there'll be another set of emerging capabilities. So if you look at all that, my company, StarCIO, we help companies that recognize they need stronger leadership acumen around technology, around being able to work with employees and business departments, being able to be more customer centric and build technology as a capability. We have 175 best practices. They started out with my book from 7 years ago, Driving Digital. Those were my best practices back then. And we have a set of advisory leadership and learning capabilities to help digital trailblazers, the people leading digital transformation in their organization. Everybody from program managers, product managers, change agents, technology leaders, data scientists, everybody who's working with the ability to innovate and change, and give them and help them adopt best practices to evolve their organization. So a lot in that, but I'm happy to dive into any of the topics.
So let me jump on a few things that strike me in terms of where things are going. I was a Chief Information Officer, Chief Technology Officer at Austin Energy from 2003 to 2010. And I started virtualization in the utility space and migration towards the cloud. And I'm wondering, as the cloud has clearly won and delivered so much capability, including cybersecurity, why would a small or medium-sized company still have an IT shop and a data center and anything like that at all? Or is it already shifted to the cloud, or where is that journey?
Well, I mean, everybody's on a continuum with how they're using infrastructure and how they're upgrading operations. I think a couple things that are universal. We need our infrastructure to be performing well. We need it to be secure. We need it to be able to be cost effective. And what transformation has really done also is required us to be very efficient, right? What kind of people do we need in IT to be able to move our organization forward? And if you looked at IT 15, 20 years ago, we had storage engineers, we had network engineers, we had systems engineers, we had a lot of very infrastructure heavy skill sets to be able to run all these different systems. Today, I think we live more in a hybrid world. I don't think it's all cloud. I don't think it's all data center. I think there's some companies that are in transition, and it takes time to really rethink how to move an application or an environment from on-prem into a cloud environment. So that's one reason why you're going to see hybrid. Another reason is there's just some payloads that just work better or are more efficient to run in data centers. And so you will continue to see companies move their payloads back and forth, particularly now where we're starting to do a lot more data and sensitive and more data volume type of work. That's where, you know, cloud can sometimes get expensive. And so some companies are pulling some things back in house and putting it on hyper-converged infrastructure and running it in their data center. But there's still a lot more movement into public clouds to take advantage of, you know, the hundreds, if not thousands, of services that they all have, speed to market in terms of capability, and be able to, you know, move what I call up stack. Well, you know, if we're focused a lot on the infrastructure, it means we're even less focused on the end customer and the business value. So that's ultimately why small and medium-sized businesses really want to look and say, how do we simplify? And cloud is often a piece of that puzzle for them.
You know, let me take you back a few years, and Andre knows this. When I was taking my graduate days, we got excited when we had a dumb PC and a mainframe, a dumb PC and a mainframe. And of course, the mainframe was where we did all the analysis because there was no analytic programs on the PC. So the cloud to me is just the reincorporation of the mainframe and people moving to the cloud. So we're going back to the dumb computer. But Andre's question is very, very interesting because I think there's room for small companies to be very, very competitive, to have a space on the cloud, to understand the interaction of all the programs on cloud to make them more efficient. So if you go now to a marketing class, I would have the marketing person from Dell to come speak to my MBA class. And it was all equations. Marketing was all equations. It was not, let's try this as a sample. It was, how do we reach the most people, right, on the internet? And she would say, I can tell you where you've been, what you're going to buy, and advertise that to you. So my question is, in sort of the opposite of Andreas, how many small enterprises, mid-cap companies, or small enterprises, I mean, mom and pop, are taking advantage of the digital transformation for their small companies with 10 employees, with 5 employees? What do you see there?
I'm seeing, you know, essentially the same opportunities and some bigger struggles as you get into smaller companies. Let me tell you what I mean by that. You know, beyond just looking at cloud, there's a ton of SaaS out there that you can use. Most of that is on cloud. Okay, a lot of it has tools for you to allow to integrate data from one system to another. You know, there's a company called MarTech out there. They do this thing called a landscape quadrant. They put the logo of every marketing technology on this grid, and every year it gets bigger and bigger. I think this year has 14,000 logos on it. And I think their research shows that the average company has over 70 SaaS solutions just in marketing. I think it is. So there's a lot of technology to take advantage of there. In fact, you know, most small companies don't have to think about cloud in terms of, you know, Azure or Amazon or Google. They should be looking at it from, what is my business goal? What are some of the capabilities that we're looking for there? What are some technology out there that are easy on-ramps for me to go try and experiment with? And there are platforms that are no code today, don't require any coding at all. There are platforms that are SaaS that are highly configurable, that have really easy on-ramps to them. And to your question, you know, 10-person companies, absolutely. My smallest client over the years was a $3.5 million charity. They had about 20 or 30 people in the group. They're essentially the S&P for charities. They rate other charities. It's a company called Charity Navigator. And at the time, their data center was a closet with a bunch of servers on the same circuit that their toaster ran on. And, you know, running Microsoft Access databases.
Mhm.
And their objective wasn't just to get more efficient. Their objective was, how do we grow from rating 9,000 charities and start rating hundreds of thousands of charities, right? So that people can find more charities that are worth putting their money into and getting involved with. And that required a complete overhaul of their systems. It required moving more to the cloud and using a lot of SaaS solutions to be able to do that. There were a lot of change management considerations, right? Even when you're working with a small group, there's a lot of, this is how we used to do things. This is the 900 things that are important. Every single one of them is important. So those are still considerations, but John, I mean, there are just, I think the hardest part for small organizations is just the being able to partner with some experts that are guides, right? There's just, if you go to any category of technology, even if you know the right category, there's dozens of categories with overlapping capabilities with hundreds of products underneath it. And if you're 10 people, you're going to try 2 or 3 of them and maybe make some mistakes around that. So, best place to start with is understanding your goals and then working with partners who can say, hey, look, given what you're trying to complete, given what your budget is, given the size of your organization, here are some things that we can go do some proof of concepts around.
Yeah, let's talk briefly about the president C-suites and what I call leadership and the delta between what leaders should know and don't know. At one time, when we looked at what people did, management class, we were divided to people say this is a geek, this is a that, this is the left side, this is the right side. I don't think we have that luxury anymore. I think that leaders have to understand all of the important data that would make their business model work. For example, even as a professor, I was getting data from LinkedIn, downloading it and creating my own data sets. Or I could go to Google. I could go to any kind of the cloud. So what do you see if you would go to a class and talk about the knowledge base of the average big time C-suite now, the people who are running the company? And I would ask you a question and say, is it true that the C-suite is up to par on digital transformation? What would be your answer?
Well, there's a divide there. I mean, if you look at the research, it says, what CIOs say is their success rate on digital transformation initiatives, and what their executive group and the board says there's a little bit of a gap there. In fact, I think somewhere around 40 to 60% of digital transformation initiatives are still struggling to deliver business impact. So we still have a lot of work to do. I mean, it's certainly better than it was a decade or 2 decades ago with failing IT projects. Now we're at a point where we're making larger bets, bigger investments at the core of our business. And there's opportunity and there's risk there. And so you got to move things slowly and quickly at the same time. Slowly in that you push a small bit of something out, put something out to your customers, let them try, get some feedback around it. And big things, meaning having a big vision, not just about becoming more efficient, but understanding where your market and customers are going and what capabilities that you need around that. Now, when you look at what those boards have to do really well around that, you're absolutely right. There's just a tremendous amount of information out there. It's almost overwhelming to learn. And yeah, you can go on ChatGPT or the LLM of your choice and ask it questions and get some basic answers around that. But what's the DNA that's behind that is the executive opening to listening and learning and being able to challenge how they're operating today, to ask questions and say, whatever we're doing today is probably going to be obsolete in the next 6 months to 5 years. So we better be able to be open to challenge our culture and say, we're going to be always looking to do something better, different in this space that we operate in. That historically has been a difficulty for many people who reach the executive level. You do a lot of work to reach to that seat. You know your playbook of what made you successful. You know what's bringing money in or what's driving efficiencies and the tools that you understand. And very often, those are the things that you're asking your team to do, is to continue doing the things that you understand that worked with you before. And what this generation has done, we call it the digital natives, has required us to reverse mentor and go to our staff and learn from them and understand what technologies, what are they experimenting with, what are they learning, how do things work today. So that reverse mentoring started about 10 years ago to understand the digital side of things. And in 10 years from now, we're going to have AI natives, right?
Mhm.
People who are, 15, 16, 20 right now. In 10 years, as Gen AI becomes a capability, you talk about, what's the developer experience going to look like? What's the marketer's experience going to look like 10 years from now? And the tools, the mechanisms are going to look very different. They're going to be very natural language oriented. They're going to be vocal oriented. We're going to start seeing some AR and VR capabilities become more mainstream in the, construction, manufacturing, healthcare, retail space. Anytime there's a connection between the physical world and the real world, robotics is going to go crazy. We're already seeing a lot around that, but those are confined to some spaces. But we're seeing it more in B2C spaces where people are interacting with robots in ways they never could have imagined before. So all that is happening right now, and you're going to be able to take advantage of that as an executive group by saying, we're going to constantly look to experiment and see what works, get feedback from it. Move things into production, into safe ways, listen to our customers, and continue to evaluate that. It's one of the reasons I think agile processes, design thinking is really so critical to running digital transformations, is the ability to continue to release capabilities and measure feedback from the people that you're trying to impact.
Yeah, let me ask you one more, and then I'll turn to Andreas. As I look at this and think about the international scene, I listen to talk shows, I read a lot of stuff, but our competition is not Russia in terms of GDP, GNP. It is not England, it is China, right? Their growth is amazing over the last, 50 years. And they also took a country that was in pure poverty, and in one generation, one cohort, as we like to say, less than 40 years, raised it up, right? So my question to you is, when we look at the GNP, the gross national product, and you know better than me that in a digital world, country doesn't matter, except with the politics associated with it and who we can keep out. And I want you to talk frankly about where we stand with China, and I'm talking about China because GNP, they just blow everybody out of the air when it comes to growth in GNP. Where do we stand in our digital transformation? Is it interactive with China? It is, since everything sits on a platform, including a country now. How do we interact with China? Even one of the greatest countries in technology, Germany, cannot keep up with. Historically, could not keep up with China, and there's nothing going on in Europe, basically. So I look at China as our biggest competitor. So in this digital world, what does it mean when we have and say we're going to compete with China? Where are they in your perception and in your analysis?
Yeah, I'm going to try to unpack that's a pretty wide question there, but what China has right now, and to an extent India has, and to an extent certain pockets in South America have, is just an incredible hunger to produce, right? And we had that in our country, for centuries, a hunger to continue to excel, to put output out, to create, and that's where they are right now. They are outpacing our ability to create, just from a lot of different factors, including their size.
Yeah, they have combined with India. Can you imagine that? They are India. They are, yeah, and that's
good. So it's not even just a matter of politics and how the country runs. It's a matter of very large populations of people who are hungry to do really good work. And do whatever it takes to do that. So they got the edge on the production side. There's no doubt about it. They got the edge on the legality side in terms of how they operate right now. To some extent, they may even have an advantage on some speed. Where we continue to have an advantage is, the consumers, whether it's business or people, are all here. We understand voice of customer and end user, what businesses need, a heck of a lot better than just understanding the production side, right? Yeah. So, what does a store look like in the future? Right. Retail is suffering right now. What does, that's a problem. We have to figure that out if we're going to have cities to continue to operate the way they were 30, 40 years ago. Even cities themselves. I mean, our cities are behind what a city in China looks like. Not necessarily India, but certainly in China, they're behind what is, the infrastructure looks like, the capabilities, the speed to operate in those countries look like. We're behind in those things. So, our edge is our ability to continue to use our knowledge around the consumption side to continue to build better product. We know what better product looks like. If we know what end users, customers, and markets needs, you can't easily do that from the lens of, I know how to write great code, or I know how to scale an A/B test in marketing to A to Z with automation, right? If you don't have that sense of what it is that we're trying to accomplish, that's going to always be our competitive edge. I think that's going to be a competitive edge in Europe, and we just have to be careful here. The technology is democratizing, right? You can do a lot of the work in a lot of different places. That's overall a good thing. Wealth democratization overall is a good thing. At least I believe in that. Not everybody does, but is overall a good thing. And but the art and science of technology is around building great products. You mentioned Apple earlier this year. Being able to do that and scale generation after generation, that's the origin of our country and where I think we need to continue to excel at.
Well, let me remind you that since about 1970, cohorts of, some people give them name, cohorts of Americans stopped making more than their parents prior to them. I think, and me analyzing this is what I think. I think China, since the beginning of market economies, it is the very first country to combine capitalism and socialism, being the state, and raise the entire generation up. So what we have to do is test, but the government will build a whole city and nobody's there. Right. So I think the question that we have to ask, as we've always asked, is and it has to do with our market economy, and it has to do with capitalism. Where is capitalism going? And I think that when we moved all of the production, if you will, to China, the manufacturing, we moved part of our capitalist culture there, and it stayed there. And so we're not a comprehensive, vertically integrated country now because of what we did with China and moving around the world. So I'm gonna let Andreas take it now because I've got so many questions.
Yeah. So I want to read this question on the Q&A. Any comments on traditional centralized cloud computing versus decentralized Web3 computing using blockchain technology?
Wow. Okay. A couple of things to unpack there. We went from China to blockchain. That's a first for me. I want to comment on something John said first, and that is,
sure.
Speed is of the essence. Okay. Policy can help us shift things back and forth in different ways. We're starting to bring chip manufacturing back to the country through policy. Intel's building plants in a bunch of places. We're getting more vertical that way. The problem is being able to move faster than our competitors are in our policies around our decisions. We haven't been very good around that. And, I'll segue that into, blockchain a little bit. Blockchain is, and just decentralized computing, that's one of these areas that probably got hyped a little bit too early. and from a technology lens. Conceptually, we all understood it. The technology to use it inside our enterprises was a little bit cumbersome. And it has some very specific use cases, beyond just cryptocurrencies. It has use cases in my vote is around smart contracts. I think that it can be very useful around smart contracts and take a lot of the labor out of it and take a lot of the friction of having, who owns something. We're only seeing very primitive versions of that without blockchain when we do digital signage of documents, and gosh, how much more efficient is that than just signing a piece of paper and faxing it back and forth. So I think blockchain has got to get to the ease of use factor before more companies can take advantage of it. And that's usually a pillar. Why you're seeing Gen AI work so well right now is it's a simple window. You have a prompt, you could throw it at anything. It's going to give you somewhere of an answer that's between hallucination, reasonable, and wow you. And people are going to try it for lots of different things, good, bad, and ugly. Blockchain, if I'm a software developer, I got a lot of hoops to go jump through before I start using it. But it still has a lot of very interesting capabilities. And I think what you're going to see is slowly it get embedded into particular business transactions. Will be the next wave of where that comes in. So you won't be building with it unless you are you're doing work on contract, or you're doing work in real estate, or you're doing anywhere where it's very contract heavy. I think you'll see those pop up very quickly. In terms of just moving to the cloud, quite frankly, I'm going to try to keep things as simple as possible. Until I don't have to. Most of us don't have the scale to really consider some of the distributed computing models that are out there. And if you do, I'm probably going to do it without blockchain because of performance reasons.
So when you think about, and I think top of mind for everybody is AI as as something else to deal with, right? So, but when you think about, I'll just give you an example of how scale and putting different business models together is sort of eating the world up. Are you both familiar with Amazon Flex?
I don't know that one. No.
Yeah. So Amazon Flex is basically leveraging Uber or DoorDash to deliver things using third-party people. Not their own infrastructure. They are so successful and they are growing so fast. And they're sort of like the sleeping giant. Whenever everybody tells me, what stock should I buy? I say, go buy Amazon, because they have no ceiling. They have no ceiling. They can deliver anything you want. It used to be books and now it's everything you want. And there is no ceiling on that. They still work with third parties on many things, but as they bring it in, so Amazon Flex is basically you get paid, you sign up for a trip, and you go to a delivery warehouse or a Whole Foods, and they give you 30 packages, and you deliver them, and they pay you, on the average $25 to $30 an hour, and it's very organized and it's very well done, but it's usually is using the gig economies, third parties, right? So when you think about all the IT behind that. The verification, using the phone, the camera, the cloud, the compute, talking to the guy who gets the package, delivered, signing. I mean, all this is just like moving so fast, right? So when you think about the small guy and the middle guy, and they're leveraging DoorDash and what have you, and the IT on the retail side, right? But it could apply to anything. I mean, what is the biggest challenge? How do people keep up with all these new technologies, new languages, new programming? How much is on the phone? How much is a native application versus not? I mean, it seems daunting to me that IT shops can actually keep up. What is your thoughts? Where is that going?
Well, I agree with you. It is daunting. And that's part of my job. I do a lot of writing and speaking around technology, and sometimes I know a technology, sometimes I don't know it, sometimes I know it, but I don't know what name it is. I know what Amazon Flex is. I just didn't know what it was called. it, it comes down to a couple things. Okay. Number one, uh, understanding what you have and getting value from it. Okay. We're trying, when you really kind of unpeel what we're trying to accomplish as businesses, we have customers. We're trying to grow the number of customers. We're trying to sell them more products and services. We're trying to improve our satisfaction. And then we're trying to become more efficient. Okay. Technology is definitely a part of every single one of those equations. Okay. But I'm still first looking at, what do my customers expecting differently in 30, 90, and 180 days different that I can't service well? Or what other companies are coming into my market that that I have to be cognizant of? I produce a lot of content. I've written 1,000 articles over my career and 2 books. I'm afraid of the Star Trek syndrome, where people won't read my stuff anymore. They're going to go to ChatGPT and just ask questions, and I'm just going to be data for it. And that's happening already. And I won't get attribution for it. And people won't read my stuff because they can ask ChatGPT the same question. Ultimately, I have to evolve my business to what my customers need and what they're looking for. And that's true for everybody else. Now, when you get one layer lower than that, I think everybody who is doing work that requires technology, data, experiences, regulated or unregulated, needs a competency to continually do research and to continue to challenge how they are doing things today. Okay, and you can do that internally. Larger organizations will have an innovation lab. They'll have an enterprise architecture group. They'll have a budget set aside for doing innovation projects. They'll have partners. They'll do hackathons. These are all things to bring the wide lens of everything that's possible to, what can we do to learn from the experience? Now, not everybody has all that. There are other things that you can do to get smarter about what technologies are out there, what the capabilities are. And, part of it is just being open to learning and being open to do research and to go try something. I probably log in and try a new tool, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week. Okay, is probably something I'm trying to log into and trying it out for the first time. I think every organization needs some kind of capability around that. It could be primitive, it could be expansive. I have my son working with me. He's a college student. He's doing aerospace engineering. He's doing internship for me right now. I threw him a platform and said, go figure this out. Because if you figure it out, I might be able to go build a product off of it. Remember, I got a digital native over here. He's figuring it out. Right? There are programs that you can get kids. I'm trying to think of Genesis systems. Girls Who Code. They all have programs for kids, underprivileged kids who want to do technology work. Okay, and they're just looking for opportunities to do real work for a real company. So the fact is, every company can find some level of talent to go experiment and get smarter with. It may not produce the next NVIDIA, okay, but it can help the organization get smarter about what the art of possible is.
Sure. Yes, I think that the chat has made open innovation just a monster. You're right. Everybody who's producing knowledge and depending on new knowledge now is in danger because we can get the knowledge basically from anywhere. And I was thinking, if I were in college again, what would I do? What would I do if I were in college with all of the information? Let me remind a young man like Andreas that when I was at Northwestern, I had to go stay in the library, for 9 hours, going through books and stumbling up on books now. And now I can log on to any library in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And just remind Andreas that I learned statistics on my knees, writing it out and knowing where variation came from and writing the formulas now is just a click. Yeah. But I have something up my sleeve I want to run by you real fast. What if we went back to, non-digital toys? I had a kid walk in my office and said, Dr. Butler, I just found out that I can keep my calendar, and they make calendars that's not digital, and they've been around a long time. Can you imagine a world where you're playing on the seesaw now and falling off with no lawyers? imagine a world where you're running down the street and skin your knee and no lawyers? And I'm going to give you an example, Andreas. Around the University of Texas, one of the most successful enterprises, they are selling records. They're selling 8-tracks. they're, they're selling all of this old music stuff, and they can't go crazy, right? I mean, you know, they don't know when somebody says, "Oh, where's my phone?" We never had to say that, right? Or hang up the phone. What does that mean? What do you think about going back to the electric football set? What do you think about that? Instead of playing checkers and interacting with the whole world, what do you think about that?
Well, we've certainly taken a few steps backwards in terms of real world, real person experiences, let alone being able to trust each other. And it's particularly problematic with kids growing up. It's been, you know, my kids were the first generation of digital natives, and I'd go to conferences all the time, and I'd seek out the people that you might label as tiger moms, and I would say to them, how do you manage your network so that your kids aren't on, you know, whatever channel they like, YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, doesn't really matter. It's all digital candy to them, and there's an infinite supply to them. You and I grew up in the age of 4 channels of poor resolution, of slow moving content with, you know, commercials. Eventually you got bored. I mean, you know, you picked your shows and then you went out inside and played stickball or baseball or football or something. And that's what you did. So, you know, there's, you know, I'm sure every generation looks back 20 years before and says we've lost a little by the new capabilities that we brought on. I think you know, I don't think we've figured out an answer to that yet. You know, in terms of, you know, how do we fix the loneliness problem, the collaboration problem, that certainly the trust problem. I do think the education problem needs to get solved for, you know, and I've done some keynotes at higher education, and I said to them, and this was before Gen AI, I said, if you took the cost of higher ed and map that against starting salaries, you wouldn't like the curve it produced. Okay, I know this because I was the CIO at Business Week. We used to plot this every year for MBA students and undergrads, and it was, you know, that exponential curve that doesn't make sense to anybody. If you looked at what COVID did, is it forced everybody to either learn or teach with a combination of both in-person and virtual experiences. We were terrible at it because we didn't know how to do it well, and the technology wasn't always ready for it. But we ran through a massive 2-year experiment of how to do virtualized teaching. And, you know, Google was the first sort of learning disruptor, I think, in terms of you didn't need to memorize. You could now look up anything with a Google search if you got handy with it. And now, you know, Gen AI is going it 5 steps further. You can not only prompt instead of search, but you can actually have it create the answers for you. So given all those variables, too expensive for education, not accessible to good parts of our population because of that. Tools are different for both teachers and learning. And what we expect from students coming out of college, the ability to understand industry, understand customer, experiment, work collaboratively in small and large teams. All those need to go into the think tank and say, what does a university experience look like in 5 years that we're going to start moving our way to? And, you know, it's got to start addressing some of those issues.
See, what I see, Isaac, is going back to the core disciplines. You know, the core disciplines of what I call the basic liberal arts education. If you know mathematics, you could do engineering. If you know psychology, sociology, and economics, that's no problem because you can learn everything, right? And what we don't want to do, and what I see happening in education, is that the very wealthy, it's no problem with education. So we went to Northwestern, and Northwestern is $90,000 a year, and they're turning people away. And I think that the issue in education, and remember that in the 1800s, that education was for the elite. The Ivy League was created not to go get an education, but to go meet people and come back and work in daddy's industry. So I think I see a return to the core disciplines. Like engineering is one that's really interacting, which is a top that we need, is really interacting now with biology, with chemistry, right? And I think that if we look at business schools, they took most of it from psychology, sociology, and economics and transferred it to the business school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you don't want to change a college degree into a trade school. So my son asked me, what did you do in college? Well, let me see. Yes, okay, I was a math major, but you know what? I played in the Tiger Band, I played trombone. I had classical guitar lessons, right? I was in the honorary music fraternity, right? And I met a lot of people. Now, graduate school was different. It was a grind at Northwestern. I mean, I just met a lot of people. I mean, you know math, you know music, you know English. Don't take communication, go take psychology. That's where it's all coming from. So I agree. I think the college experience has to go back to core disciplines. And this is what I think is going to happen, Andreas. When Andreas was a kid, Ford Motor Company hired the smartest people they could, and they made them engineers.
Mm-hmm.
When Andreas was a kid, Kellogg's Cornflakes hired the smartest people that they could and made them accountants. I think what's going to have to happen is that the companies themselves will also have to pay, right? The idea of education, like they do in Wall Street. I got to have an ex-student who's a professor at Princeton. Hey, you can major in anything in Princeton and end up on Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Connection, and they're going to teach you. So it might be, Isaac, that the companies themselves now, right, have got to teach people when they hire them their way of doing accounting. 6 months, like the military does. Military got it right. You go in the military, you're right. You want to learn how to fly a helicopter, you go to class. You want to be a cook, you go to class, right?
Look, I agree with you. I think that.
Oh, good.
No. I mean, it's the core of my business model is to go back to companies and say, you need to create your digital operating model.
Absolutely.
Okay. Your terminology will have some similarities and differences from industry jargon, but you need to create it. You need to be able to educate people efficiently around it. We've always said that kids coming out of college weren't truly ready for the workplace. But you got to create an environment for them to be successful. And even so now, I mean, tomorrow I do a coffee hour on LinkedIn on Fridays at 11 a.m. And tomorrow we're celebrating Father's Day. And we celebrated Mother's Day a month ago. And the topic tomorrow is exactly what we're talking about. How are we training our kids to be the next generation of digital trailblazers? And I don't know what the answer is, but what I know is that kids have a tremendous more amount of material to understand and learn. It's very hard. You think about the layers of stuff to be able to do biologic computing. Okay. And, you got to understand biology, you got to understand chemistry, you got to understand engineering, you got to understand how to interface with 10 or 20 other engineers who are doing different disciplines, and then find your space and being able to solution there. It's a hard world out there. And
let me give you something to chew on, Isaac. I was a professor at the University of Beijing in China. I fell to Japan for 14 summers. In China, 70% of the kids are majoring in the sciences and the core disciplines. In America, everybody wants to major in business. Wealth creation starts with engineering, science, and technology. We have the science of flight. Microsoft has the science of computer science. Oh, no, it's computer science. That's what we call it. And coding, right? Kellogg's Cornflakes has the science of great foods, right? M&M's has the science of putting chocolate in your hand and it's not melting. So I think if I was sitting around a table and I tell all the parents, hey, go major in the sciences and then go do an MBA or take some business classes, because wealth, and we transform Austin with sciences, not management, accounting, and finance. What Andre does in the sciences is more important for business and what you're doing than any kind of lesson in accounting, management, in finance. Because since the inception of the world, going back to a great book, 5,000 years of business enterprise, it has been new technologies and new science. And that's what America was built on. The telephone. So
Yeah.
I'm going to leave you that. I'm not charging any tuition today. No tuition today because you're a good guy.
Let me get a few more things out of Isaac. Isaac, there's another thing that is transforming industry. We don't talk about it as much today because of AI and cryptocurrency and whatever's going on. But Internet of Things, sensors everywhere, collecting that data, it's all infrastructure, is still early days. Some industries are farther along than others. Do you see this as an ongoing quest? Are we going to sensorize the whole planet? Are you going to be walking around with a chip implant in your neck? And what does that mean to IT and the enterprise? Sensorizing everything and leveraging, all kinds of technologies to gather that information. Where is that at? Well,
to answer your question the answer is yes. We're going to sensitize everything. The real art of it is sensitize, doing it in such a way that it's providing value, not just from a business perspective, from an end user, very much from a safety perspective as well. Mm-hmm. Doing so where we're collecting data that is acknowledging people's privacy. These are the hard problems to solve around these things. But how many times have you sat at a traffic light waiting when there's no other cars coming the other way? Mm-hmm. It's a matter of economics before every traffic light in every city is going to have those sensors, because it improves quality of life and it reduces our carbon footprint. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then what happens as the autonomous vehicles get better, and we find the right level of regulation of how to institute them and where to institute them. Okay, so we're going to see them more than just a handful of cities. We're going to see more of these autonomous vehicles with thousands of sensors in them, taking over aspects of what we do day to day, driving around, right? And what happens when that expands out to smarter cities and smarter buildings? And what does the world look like when we have a smarter office space? Are we going to find it more enjoyable to come into our office space? And is the improved infrastructure with technology that runs faster to get us into cities faster and safer, are those going to reduce the reasons why we're going to want to stay at home and bring people back into the office more? So the answer is yeah, we're on a path where we are going to do a lot more sensor oriented technologies. Any place where there's a connection between a physical interaction and a digital capability, we're going to want to put sensors in them. And you talk about going back to John in education. I don't think it's just about science and engineering. I think it's about creative science and engineering. Right? Yeah. There's a very important part of not just knowing, okay, there's this thing out there called Raspberry Pi and I can go build some robots with it and things like that. Let's talk about, how we can do something useful with it, and make sure that as we go through these programs in our school, that the usefulness, the safetyness, the privaciness of what we're building, and then of course the scalability of what we're doing is all very important. You mentioned edge earlier on. I mean, to me, the biggest edge use case is around human safety. Do I want, real-time data of my surgery in the hospital beaming up to the cloud and then coming back down? Or do I want some infrastructure at the hospital that's doubling up what's in the cloud and getting a better experience for my doctors and lower latency that's a human safety factor. Same thing with anything autonomous. So I think we're going to continue living in this hybrid world. There's going to be compute in cloud. There's going to be compute at edge. We're certainly going to be doing a lot more sensors. They're getting better, smarter, cheaper. I think the one thing that's going to sort of limit, where things are going to start providing a ceiling to us is also something that you mentioned earlier. It's both the cost and the sustainability, the carbon that we're creating, right?
Mhm.
And, if you look at, the amount of carbon Gen AI takes to go train is a huge cost factor to that from a carbon and a cost perspective. And that's going to be a limiting factor over how we're using these technologies and who and how we're using them. So I think that's going to be the variable that, talk about where we can get some innovations, like find ways to use more energy efficient and green energy sources, and then we can have another round of competitive advantage over the next 100 years.
And don't take
Yeah.
away creativity of people. I mean, when I was in high school and college, the quarterback called the plays themselves. Now they got earphones, they got baseball pitchers, coaches telling them what to throw based on the analytics. I mean, it's pretty wild. Well, this has been good. It's been very good.
So Isaac, looking at the time here, what's in front of you the next 6 months? What is StarCIO doing? What are you busy on? Going to any events? Traveling? What's going on? Tell us.
Well, I just been to several events in Q2. I was at PEGA this week, at SAP last week, Appian a few weeks earlier. Doing my own research. How are enterprise platforms plugging in generative AI capabilities? Are we going to be seeing, how they validating the accuracy? What's enterprise ready? Where are we going to see benefits other than just productivity improvements? So that's some of the areas that I'm researching on. StarCIO is continuing to build out its programs for digital trailblazers. Our new program, I'll give your audience a sneak peek to it. We are launching a community for digital trailblazers. It's called the Digital Trailblazer Community. We've been building up some capabilities around that. And the coffee hour that I do that I mentioned earlier, that is our first step into that program. It's a sort of a discussion very much like this. It's audio only. And you can come up and ask a question, just join the stage to do that. Last week, we talked about dynamic work. This week, we're talking about digital trailblazers and raising our kids to become ones. We've got a few others coming this month on M&A is a topic that we're covering. How digital trailblazers participate in M&A. Every week it's literally a different topic that we cover. So if you go to starcio.com/coffee/next-event, that always redirects to the upcoming event on LinkedIn, and everybody is free to join. Beyond that, I'm always looking to meet new people, to help them with their journeys around digital, to help companies, startups, bring their technology capabilities out. So lots of things that I tend to work on.
Thank you. John, final thoughts.
I think it's very, very good. I think the future is always in the research. I think more importantly, as you noted, the creativity has really has to escalate around the technologies that we did, just like it escalated around the automobile, just like it escalated around the train. It's going to have to escalate around digital formation and new business models so that we can continue to do well in America.
Absolutely. Well, Isaac, thanks for being with us today. It's a pleasure to visit with you, and hopefully we'll stay connected. I wish you great success on the journey of helping all those CIOs transform, leap forward, be bold, don't be afraid.
But the word I use is that we need more people who have the confidence to lead change in their organization.
Right.
And transformation is so much a people challenge more than a technology challenge. And that's who companies need. They need more people who are going to go up and say, we want to go try something and see if this works.
Sure.
Sloan's My Life with General Motors.
All right, Johnny, take us away.
Operator, why don't you help me pay this call? See the girl on the market's faded and faded. She's living in LA with my best old ex-friend Ray. Yeah, she said she well and sometimes hated. Isn't that the way they say it goes? But let's forget all that. Sitting in the numbers, you can't find it. So I can call just to tell them I'm fine at the show. I overcome the blow. I learned to take it well. I wish myself could fit myself. This isn't that. It's not the way it feels. You might remember that one, Isaac, as a little kid.
I do. It's a good song.
The Jim Croce? Yes.
Yep.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
I'll
you.
see you guys later. Isaac.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Andre.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch.